As we continue to look at advertising, we don't have to look far. Indeed, advertising is almost ubiquitous. It's an ubiquitous form of argumentation, persuasion, and communication in that we are just surrounded by it. It seems to be everywhere, and it seems to be popping up in new places that it wasn't previously. And so our text defines advertising as something that is a specific form of communication intended to sell a product, service, candidate, or idea. If we go back 2,000 years ago to Aristotle's notion of rhetoric, written down on page one of his text, The Rhetoric, he states that persuasion or rhetoric is all available means of persuasion, and it is the counterpart to dialectic. And so, what Plato and Aristotle thought of as two dialecticians equally having a debate in order to uncover a universal or more objective truth is actually more two rhetoricians having a debate in order to further their own agenda. And so, even if we do not think that this is true in its officially, we can often see that people that are arguing for a certain perspective are indebted in that perspective to a certain degree. And so when we look at advertising, we are aware of this agenda. We are aware that there is a desirable outcome, and the desirable outcome here is to sell that product. And so it fits the model well here as two rhetoricians. If we look at the rhetoricians as advertisers, and we look at rhetoric and persuasion through the lens of contemporary advertising. And so one of the reasons that companies spend so much money on advertising, and we see advertising everywhere, is because it is ubiquitous and it is effective. And so, if companies spend more money on a product, they that might not result in more sales. But studies show that if a company sells or spends more on advertising, they will most likely sell more products, even though the product has not changed at all. And so, until consumers maybe start speaking back and resisting the nature of advertising and over advertising, we will continue to see the rise of advertising. For us here as communication scholars, this is a nice place to dive in, practice a little media literacy, and recognize levels of argumentation that are all around us. And so, all available means of persuasion. There were no films, there were no photographs, there were no telephones, there was no social media when Aristotle created this definition, yet it still holds true to this day. I ask you, where have you seen advertising lately where you did not previously see it? We see it in films in the form of product placement. We see it in songs that celebrate certain high end items. We see it in the sky, written in clouds by airplanes. We see it on the ground in guerrilla advertising in the form of chalk art and stencil art. We even see it at the bottom of urinals because advertisers have found out that this is an untapped space where people will be and where people will inherently be looking at a certain direction. Lo and behold, there is now advertising down there. And so the first element here is that it's paid for communication. Even if that fine print is very small down here in the bottom, or maybe a little bit larger up here in the top, where we can see an advertisement there that I now am implicated in advertising because I'm using this service to produce this video. And so this is paid for communication. That means that the advertising company has paid to have this message created and disseminated in this medium. And so, even if this is hard to locate at times, it should always be there in some way. And so, we can follow the money and see what a little bit of the rhetorical intentions are. And of course, we know if it is advertising, then the rhetorical intention is to produce the outcome of a consumer who will purchase the product, or an individual who will think highly of the service or celebrate a particular idea. And so, number two, presentational. It's really non-personal. Advertisers have also tried to combat the non-personal aspect of advertising, um, encouraging people with many followers to be influencers, because now they have followers because of their identity and their friendship networks. Now they have been tapped to promote a product, seemingly to people that they might know on a personal level. And so this is an attempt to make this more personal, but it is still non-personal and paid for advertising, as certain individuals are identified and then hired as employees to promote products in a presentational way. So number three, advertisements sell products, services, but also ideas or lifestyles. Once again, we're moving away from the territory of the material or the object or the product, and moving into that conceptual arena of an idea or a lifestyle or a way of viewing the world or a perspective. And so you see this with oftentimes with products and objects that we really don't need, like gum, for example, or sugary drinks, or even insurance. And so you see a lot of explosions, a lot of typhoons, and lightning, and a lot of whirlwinds, and just an extreme sensibility going on when selling products such as gum. And so we're really selling an idea. The idea that when you consume gum in the middle of your day, you're adding a spark of excitement and flavor to your otherwise dull world or dull palate here. And so, bazooka, boom, you have just now experienced a little slice of life here, right here in a small product. Sponsors are identified. Once again, we see advertisers trying to challenge this element, yet through their product, they are identifying themselves. And so advertisement is based on identifying the idea or the product. Now, it might even be more powerful to hide that and have subliminal messages. But nevertheless, we would still, or the advertisers would like the viewers to still come back around to the moment where they are conscious and aware that this product is what's giving them the positive sensation. And so this clip here from Wayne's World, a movie that takes place almost 20 years ago now, that has a small moment in the film where Wayne makes a joke about product placement. At this time, product placement is just starting to becoming more pervasive in films, and this film cashes in on it, both humorously and literally, as Pizza Hut, Pepsi, and a few other products are used as product placement within the film to sell those products. And so once again, we might look up very small and sear down very small and read the fine print and see that this is actually paid for advertising and the sponsors are identified. This marks it in another realm of dialectical argumentation in the ways that Aristotle or Plato and Socrates viewed argumentation and dialectic, and really into that sophistic notion of having specific rhetorical outcomes as your desired effect of any given communication exchange. And so, once again, this is just a really nice arena to see some of the elements between this ancient debate between dialecticians and rhetoricians. And so, advertising and cultural myths. This is a large space, and I encourage everybody to slow down here and take a look at what myths are being created, maintained, and then reinforced through advertisements. And usually it's a reinforcement of our already assumed cultural truths. And really, these aren't objective truths. Once again, these are cultural agreements. And so we agree that certain societal values and myths within the structure of any given collective context are assumed and also celebrated. And so the myth here of a vacation in a bottle, the leisureliness of the beach, and the playfulness of having time off and being able to engage in a more relaxing lifestyle away, possibly, from a home space is here exemplified by this beverage. And so you find your beach, really, once again, finding that idea of a leisurely outing here inside the can. And so a slew of societal beliefs and values as advertising caters largely to our myths that are ingrained. So advertising oftentimes just maintains and reinforces those societal myths. Advertisers don't really want to challenge myths so much, and more so cater to our already held beliefs and in turn produce more consumers. And so we see it doubling down. I encourage you to look at these ads and think about their logical fallacies that we discussed. Think about the syllogistic arguments and the enthymemes that are also discussed, and find some of those societal myths. My bonus is faster than your bonus. Here, catering to a lexicon that is largely associated with the business world and economics. And so identifying something as better than something else just based on its economic value, and then reducing that economic value to a symbol, such as a car, that in turn will produce a status and an implied happiness here. It's also a circular argument, just saying nothing by repeating what is already known. And so this car is more expensive than your car, right? If I have a syllogism, if I have an expensive car, then I am happy. I have an expensive car, therefore I am happy. And so really just maintaining some of those cultural assumptions that aren't necessarily true, but they are agreed upon. And so when we see these ads, we are often not surprised or taken aback, right? Because they reify what we've already come to know. So I think because of that, advertising is oftentimes left out of the critical space of inquiry. But if we want to look at the societal values of any given culture, as I stated in a previous lecture, we could look at artifacts, and we can look at films and movies, television shows, and music, but we can also look at ads. And so this one is very interesting here. We see a BMW, a symbol of status, and a luxury item. And we see a female here adorning the gestures typically associated with a male, and she is also depicted as being close to nature in a particular way. And so this ad caters to a female identity or a feminine archetype, but it also celebrates the masculine identity. And so it really reifies our gendered myths. And so our assumptions of gender are not natural. They're not objective as a culture, but socially produced and socially constructed. They're maintained and reinforced through advertisements such as this. These previous two, I encourage you to take a look at them and start to break down them yourself and ask yourself what is going on. See if you can apply some of the syllogisms and some of the logical fallacies that we have discussed, along with some of the myths that both of those ads are catering to and maintaining. And so advertisers also target audiences, and not only do they don't only target audiences, but they create audiences through this targeting. And so this is an odd ad here of a child looking like Ronald McDonald. Not really a child, but a baby, and almost a recently born baby, adorning the artifacts and posturing of Ronald McDonald. And so it's interesting that if you look at fast food restaurants, you'll often see a cartoon characterization, a mascot that looks like it would primarily appeal to children. Now, once again, that kind of dialectician versus rhetorician. A dialectician has an objective pursuit, the pursuit of truth in all of its Platonic notions. And so advertisers are well known not to be hampered or hindered by such pursuits of objective or universal truth, right? And so the government steps in and states that you cannot have cigarette ads featuring a cartoon character. And cigarette ads can't be in certain magazines or on television during times. And so that is not possible anymore by advertisers. But nothing has been said about cartoon characters used to sell fast food products. And so if we look across the board, we often see cartoon characters from Jollibee to McDonald's used to sell fast food items. And so from early on, we are socialized and we are encouraged to enjoy these products. And when we're young and we haven't developed a critical sensibility or any sort of media literacy, this might be very effective. And so when you talk to children, they oftentimes want fast food options. The place is depicted as a magical sight there, peppered with bright colors and cartoon characters and toys. And so when we grow up and we learn that this might not be the healthiest option and this might not be the magical sight we have learned it to be, we still might long for nostalgia to go back to that space and experience something that was happy in our youth. And so we have been constructed and enculturated by these ads. And so not only just targeted, but created. And so slowing down here, advertisement is non-personal. It is mass mediated for the most part. It goes through production outlets, but it feels like interpersonal communication. And so it functions in very much the same way. Attention, getting people's attention, retention, holding one's attention through a relationship, and then eliciting a response, a kind response. You're my friend. You have said nice things to me. I say nice things back to you, and I want to help you in the future, kind of an interpersonal dynamic. Well, similar relationships are fostered through advertising. And so once you have my attention, you have my loyalty, and then I would like to do nice things for you and maybe buy your product or recommend your product to somebody else as I also become an advertiser. And so I'm critical of Coca-Cola here, but I still have this Coca-Cola ad up while I am talking. This is reinforcement. This is adding to the symbolic weight of Coca-Cola, and it is definitely an advertisement as well for Coca-Cola, because that is the intention of Coca-Cola, to put out so many ads out into the world, and every time it is uttered, it is a small point for success for the company. And so a lot of advertisements promote friendship that moves and runs through the product itself. And so share a Coke with a friend. Here, two hands taking the symbol of the Coca-Cola symbol and sharing here, all made possible by the company, the brand, and the product. And so lastly, ads reflect and construct societal norms and values. And so if we want to look back at society, if we want to look at our society today and just see some of the norms and values that we have as a collective, then we can just look at some of the values within ads that are reinforced. And so here we have this ad that is provocative. So we live in a provocative society that takes taboo subjects and oftentimes uses them for sensational purposes. It's punny. So that means it's based on a pun, and it is kind of mildly funny in different ways. It's phallic. The symbols, the objects look like phallic symbols as well, but it's all in good fun, and so it's clean there. And so once again, this caters to a patriarchal and male-dominated society where most text, images, and symbols are funneled through the male experience. If this said the opposite and referred to female genitalia, it would not be as pervasive, I don't think. But it also goes through traditional myths of feminine archetypes that promote cleanliness, right? And might encourage one to become clean and therefore more desirable. And so you can look at ads no matter how outlandish or no matter how straightforward, and start to unpack some of the myths that we have as a society. And because ads revolve around these myths and oftentimes cater to and maintain these myths, we can really see some of our most tried and true assertions or agreements as a society reflected in advertisements. Thank you.